made no distinction between the holy, sacred, and the profane. Now this is something I can do something with. Mircea Eliade, the preeminent scholar of the history of religions, makes a clear delineation between the sacred and the profane in his book titled, you guessed it, The Sacred and the Profane.
He said it! He said it!
When it comes to defining what is sacred and what is profane, certain equivalencies are set up to show us, to give us an idea of the gestalt of these two profound ideas. Starting off simply, on page 10, he says that the first possible definition of the sacred is that it is the opposite of the profane, which tells us absolutely nothing. Lucky for us, 2 pages later, he builds off of that by providing this illustrative analogy. The polarity sacred-profane is often expressed as an opposition between real and unreal, or pseudo-real. So what is sacred is what is associated with what is real, and what is profane is what is unreal, or illusory, or Maya, if you're Buddhist. But these aren't just adjectives. These are modes of being, ways of existing, of being alive. They are polar opposite ways of experiencing the world and predetermining where your attention goes. The sacred mode of being is the religious, spiritual one, striving for connection with what is the most real, while the profane is the secular one, with priorities oriented by something other than what is the most real, if they're oriented at all. And that might be hard to conceptualize, and understandably so. So, Eliade illustrates these two modes of being by describing how each experiences space.
What a wonderful world.
Now, not outer space, but space in the sense of the space that we occupy, length, height, width, etc. I don't know what etc. would be. There's generally 3. The sacred mode of being experiences space as non-homogeneous, so it varies. It's hierarchical, based on the extent to which the sacred, or most real, manifests itself. For example, a cathedral is experienced as more real than, say, a supermarket. Walking into a cathedral inspires awe, wonder, and other peak emotions associated with an interface with ineffability, whereas the supermarket inspires you to wonder if they've restocked the edible cookie dough.
Me prefer the term cookie enthusiast. Yeah.
In the profane mode, on the other hand, space is experienced as homogeneous, non-varied, neutral, without the hierarchies associated with what is most real. It's unconcerned with what is the most real. A church is a fancy building with cool windows and maybe some interesting history. A home is the cozy place you watch Netflix. And the supermarket is the place you reluctantly venture out to buy your edible cookie dough to eat at home while you watch Netflix instead of going to be in a church. Sometimes I like doing that. I'm not a perfect man. Next, Eliade notes that if the world is to be lived in, actually, let's go back first. I want to highlight that the sacred and the profane are poles. No one is going to exist perfectly at one or the other. They're all going to exist somewhere on a line between the two. Cool. Next, Eliade notes that if the world is to be lived in, it must be founded. And no world can come to birth in the chaos of the homogeneity of profane space. Now, what that means is sacredness has to be established at a fixed point intentionally, in the midst of the profane, if it has any chance of manifesting later. What is involved is undertaking the creation of the world that he has chosen to inhabit. He then goes on to detail ways in which we can establish the sacred and allow for its emergence in the profane world. One key way that he mentions, most useful to us, is the symbolic installation of the Axis Mundi. The Axis Mundi, or world axis, is an ancient idea that there is a central axis that connects heaven and earth. It is the through line connecting the profane up to the sacred, and through the Axis Mundi, the sacred and the profane touch. Next, man becomes aware of the sacred because it manifests itself, shows itself as something wholly different from the profane. This manifestation of the sacred, its breakthrough and recognition by a human mind, Eliade calls hierophany. In intentionally, symbolically establishing an axis mundi, we lay the groundwork for hierophany to occur. Once we've done that, there are a few ways we can optimize our mind and our surroundings for hierophany, for revelation, revealing of the sacred, which I'll tell you later in the video.
Why does everything have to be so complicated?
Experiencing nature, Eliade says, is one of the most fundamental and reliable ways to experience hierophany, or revealing of sacredness. Indeed, he says, the world is impregnated with sacredness. So mountains, valleys, rivers, forests, caves, glaciers, nature in its undisturbed glory can inspire awe and wonder akin to the encounters of the most real experienced in cathedrals and other traditionally sacred spaces. In The Sacred and the Profane, he specifically highlights the sky, mentioning many tribal and civilizational gods associated with the sky, as well as the majesty of celestial immensity and terror inspired by it and its storms.
Double rainbow all the way across the sky. Oh my God.
He highlights water and the creative, destructive, and transformative symbolic power it has in its role as fons et origio, spring and origin, the reservoir of all the possibilities of existence, preceding every form and supporting every creation, as well as the flood story of Noah and other cultures, and its ritual use of baptism via immersion. He also highlights terra, earth, dry land. He draws historical examples of our need for connection to and relation with the earth and ground, including the laying of newborn infants on the ground to be consecrated by Mother Earth, the act of burial, and the fertile fecundity associated with Earth and its vast phylogeny of inhabitants, plant, animal, and other. Now, just as practicing meta-meditation is associated with increased feelings of social connectedness, engaging with sacredness is considered to be an experience of engaging with the inexhaustibleness of reality in a way that protects us from being overwhelmed by loneliness, homesickness, cultural shock, alienation, absurdity, and anxiety. It makes us feel content by making us feel like we're at home with ourselves and the world. This feeling of connectedness to the world is most easily found by connecting to other people, recognizing the parts of ourselves that we see in them, and then delighting in the parts that are novel.